and welcome to the last session of Git.net. My name is Ido Flatow. I come to you from far away from Israel, and we are here to talk about the new face of ASP.NET, to talk about ASP.NET MVC, about the Razor view engine, and about jQuery, and about some other stuff. First of all, does anybody know the joke about Bill Gates and the Ford car industry? Have you heard of it? There is a joke that says that Bill Gates once compared the car industry, Ford specifically, to the computer industry, and said that if the car industry would advance itself like the computer industry, then cars would cost $20 and will run 2,000 kilometers per liter. So the car industry was offended and said that, well, if the car industry was advanced as the computer industry, cars will break down twice a day. And before the airbag would deploy, it will ask you, are you sure? So if you try to compare the car history to ASP.NET, well, this is ASP.NET 1.1. And I guess you don't want to drive that car anymore, right? Because it's nice, it does the job, but it needs a lot of tweaking in order to do some other cool stuff. And moving from .NET 1.1 to .NET 2, we actually got a new improved ASP.NET 2. How many people here developed in ASP.NET 2? Ever? Okay, a lot of you. So you are familiar with the membership provider, right? Profiles, master pages, themes. Those are the new things that we got in ASP.NET 2, and those are the things that made ASP.NET easy to use. As we move on to ASP.NET 3.5 and .NET 3.5, we got better technologies. We got Ajax, we got WCF, we got another set of technologies to develop web services, web applications. It works a lot better with Entity Framework, okay, and Link. And from there, we moved on to where we are today, which is ASP.NET 4. And ASP.NET 4 offers a lot of things, including ASP.NET MVC, including the Razor view engine, including the new web API, which is currently in beta in MVC 4. And these are the new stuff that makes ASP.NET so much fun to use. And this is what we're going to talk about in this session. So my name is Ido Flatow. I'm an MVP for connected systems. I work a lot in the web world, whether it's WCF, ASP.NET, Silverlight applications. I'm the only one in my team that actually knows how IIS works. I'm guessing that among you, only some know how actually it works. And I work a lot in the Azure field and the web in Azure. So I do a lot of web programming and consulting. And let's talk a bit about MVC. Who here thinks he knows what ASP.NET MVC is? Do you know what MVC is? Otherwise, you won't have come to this session, I guess. So MVC, to some people, look like just another ASP.NET project, okay? But it's not. It's more than that. ASP.NET MVC is actually based on the MVC design pattern. Model, view, controller. Separation of concerns. Separate the way you present things to the user from the way you get those things from the database, from the way you validate those things, from the way you construct it on the server side. Make a clear separation between the view and the controller. Okay, MVC is all about testing. Once you separate the controller from the view, it's easier to test. You don't have to test JavaScript. You don't have to test your logic of converting an entity into a grid view. Okay, you simply need to check that your business logic works properly. And one thing that is so cool about ASP.NET MVC, ASP.NET MVC uses friendly URLs. There's no more .aspx or that sort of stuff. ASP.NET MVC is all about the clean URLs that allows you to navigate to each and every part of your application easily. And we'll see that in a couple of seconds. So basically, ASP.NET is not just another framework, okay? It's an entire framework for building web applications that use the basic concepts of ASP.NET, the core functionality of ASP.NET, but on top of it adds a lot more. So a lot of people that use MVC sometimes try to give MVC more than it deserves. So MVC is not the new version of ASP.NET, okay? There is ASP.NET Web Forms and there is ASP.NET MVC, and they exist together. You have these two versions that you can choose from. We'll talk during the end about the differences between these two technologies. MVC is not a software factory. It's a complete framework. Okay, it doesn't compile itself to ASP.NET Web Forms. It's a different framework. It works in a different way. We'll see in a second the basic concepts of using an MVC application. Okay, MVC is not going to eliminate JavaScript from your code. On the other hand, it's going to add more JavaScript to your code, because once we use MVC, building an HTML is so simple. We'll just add some new jQuery plugins to it and everything works. Okay, so it's more use of JavaScript in your code, but we tend to use plugins and standard frameworks, and we'll see some of them later on. Okay. Another thing about ASP.NET MVC, ASP.NET MVC doesn't have view state. So this is the part where you give your applause to the programmers that developed ASP.NET MVC, because we got rid of those evil view states. Okay, but because we don't have view states, we don't have the option of working with ASP.NET controls. Because ASP.NET controls, the web pages controls, use view state. Okay, and MVC doesn't, so you can't use them. MVC is not an isolated framework, meaning that when you use MVC, you can actually use ASP.NET membership, ASP.NET profiling, ASP.NET caching. All the basic services of ASP.NET have been extracted from ASP.NET and are now the core of ASP.NET. So both Web Forms and MVC can use these techniques. Okay? And one final thing, MVC is not that hard to learn and use. Okay? It's quite easy. So I'm guessing that most of you saw at least once this diagram of the MVC design pattern, right? The model, the view, and the controller, right? Familiar with this? Yeah? Okay. So I don't like this design pattern. I don't like to display it as a diagram. So let's try to understand how actually MVC works. First of all, you've got the browser. Okay? A client uses a browser, sends a URL request to the server. That server catches that request and passes it to a controller. How does it catches it? It uses a special routing table that I will show you in a couple of minutes. Okay? There's a routing table that says if a request comes that match this pattern, pass it on to this controller class. The controller then talks to a model object, generates an entity from the database, loads it from somewhere, okay, and then formats that data object and passes it into a view. Okay, a view is another type of feature of MVC. A view can be anything. It can be a JSON object. It can be an HTML page. Okay, so that view simply renders the output according to the data it received, and that output can be anything you like. The fact that we're using MVC doesn't mean that our controller always generates HTMLs. Our controller can return an image, an XML, a JSON object. Okay, it can return a redirect to the browser, so it will go to the appropriate page. So this is the life cycle of MVC. You don't have page load. You don't have pre-render, okay, or all the other things that you had in ASP.NET Web Forms. It's a different life cycle. It's a different framework. So I want to show you a short example of an MVC application. And this is an application that the only thing I did to it after creating the project is adding an entity framework model to the project and adding a tab called products that shows a product list. Okay? So first of all, the URL is products, okay, not products.aspx, because it's not really a page, it's a view. And that product gives me a list of products. Now, if I try to understand how this actually works, so first of all, when I enter localhost/product in my browser, I'm first of all hitting my routing mechanism. So let's look at the routing mechanism. Okay, and the routing mechanism defines routing between the URL and the controller class. So for example, if I'm entering /products, that means that I didn't use any of the controllers. The default controller will be, I use the controller named product, okay? I didn't use any action, so the default action is index. Okay, this is simply defining a template according to which the router will parse that URL. So a controller is called product, and as you can see, I have here a class called product controller. Okay, this is a convention of using controller classes. Okay, the name of the controller and the addition of controller, the suffix. And in here I can see the index method, which is activated because it is the default. Okay, we can get to the same point by writing /index. Okay, it's the same URL. I don't have to use it because I have default values. And what this method actually does, it takes an entity framework context, loads a list of products, and returns a view according to those products. Now, in ASP.NET MVC, there are a lot of defaults. So, for example, if I return a view that uses this product list, that view is actually probably named index also. Okay, so if I go over to the views, to the product views, I can see there is an ASPX called index. Okay, this is an actual ASPX page that has MVC in it. So first of all, as you can see, I'm deriving from a view page. Okay, and it is a generic type that knows exactly which type my model is. And I can just go over and do a for each loop. If you ever use the repeater control in ASP.NET, anyone ever used the repeater control in ASP.NET? Yeah? So it's similar to using a repeater, just use a for each. This is mixed code. Remember mixed code from classical ASP back in the 90s? Okay? So MVC is a bit returning back to the roots of developing websites. It uses mixed code. In this case, it's C# inside an ASPX page. And I just do a for each loop over the model items, and I print each one of the items in a table. Okay? That's as simple as that. I don't need to create a server control and attach it to a data source. I just define everything inside the ASPX. Okay? So this is the basic concept of MVC. You take a URL, you send it to the server, that server passes the URL, activates a controller, the controller takes the data from somewhere, passes out to a view, that view takes the data, renders it according to what it needs. This is happened to be an HTML page, but it could have been a JSON object. Okay, we'll see that in a few minutes. And it's as simple as that. No, it's not as simple as that. It gets trickier over time. Okay, but these are the basic concepts of MVC. So let's try to dig a bit more into MVC. So first of all, let's talk a bit about the features of MVC. So first of all, MVC has strongly typed helpers, meaning that in your code, you can use, in your mixed code in the ASPX, you can use classes that allow you to do, say, HTML encoding, create Ajax links to other pages, okay? You get validations in your user interface automatically by using the system.component model libraries. Okay, we'll see that in the demo, how you can actually decorate your entity model with validation attributes, and you don't need to use any validation objects in your ASPX file. Ever used ASP.NET validations in web forms? Right? You had to select each validation that will match each of your fields. In ASP.NET MVC, you don't need to do that. It's automatic, according to your model object. Okay? ASP.NET MVC uses caching. So for example, the first time that MVC understood that the controller that needs to be activated is the product controller, it actually cached that information. So the next time I enter a URL that says product, MVC doesn't need to recalculate which controller it is. It automatically knows that it is the product controller and it has the reference to that class type. Okay? And every part of ASP.NET MVC is extensible, meaning all over through the pipeline, from the routing mechanism to the way the controller is activated. to the way the class of the controller is selected, to the way the view is selected, and the model is passed on to that view. Everything is extensible. You can add your own things to the pipeline, different authentication modes, different caching modes, different ways of transforming the parameters that were sent in the URL to the parameters that are sent to the controller method. Okay? Everything in ASP.NET MVC is extensible. So let's start examining a real application. I'm saying real because no one actually used this application other than myself. And this is a bicycle shop, an online bicycle shop. I'll show you basically how it works. I have here a list of categories. I can select a category, a subcategory. I can get a list of products. I can select the product, view its information. This is all MVC, okay? You can see, for example, that this product is actually the URL sales store / product details / 771. This is the ID of this bicycle, okay? I can add it to a cart. Can select some other things I want to purchase. Okay, I can look at that cart. I can change it, see the total price. Go to the checkout, enter my username. Okay, this is actually using ASP.NET membership provider. There is a database behind the code. And I can insert my details. Let's just select some stuff. I was born yesterday. Okay, let's enter. Oh, sorry. Okay, as you can see, there are validations that are occurring everywhere. And if I try to enter the wrong email address, email is wrong. And, sorry, my mouse is sleeping. And once I submit the order, thanks for the order, we'll process and ship it to you within 7 days. This is a great app. It doesn't require me any credit card, so it's free bicycles for everyone if you want. Okay, but to use it, you'll need to go to my machine, and it's not available online. So how did I actually build that application? Let's start to see it in code. So first of all, the default page I got in was actually a controller named store. Okay, and this is the store controller. And the store controller, the default page I got in was index, and that returns a view. And now that we are all familiar with MVC, what is the name of the view that we actually loaded? Index. Okay, so we'll go to views, and we'll go to the store view. And this is the index. First of all, this is a CSHTML file. This is not an ASPX file. Okay, this is a different way of writing MVC application. We'll talk about it in a second. As you can see, there is no similarity between what's written here and what's been shown, and what's been shown here. Okay? If you notice, I'm actually returning only the text that is shown here. Okay? So this is something that is similar to master pages in ASP.NET. Okay? This is called layouts. It's actually the basic concept of master pages in ASP.NET. If I look at the code, I'll see that I actually have a special page called view start. This is my master page that defines the layout of the entire system. And this master page actually tells the application, please use the following layout. Okay, and as you might see, there is the @ sign and the brackets, and this is not mixed code format. This is what we call Razor format. Okay, this is the Razor view engine. CSHTML files that you see here are actually Razor files. Sorry, my machine froze for a second. Okay, these CSHTML files are actually Razor, and we'll talk in a second about the Razor. But if we look at this layout, you can see that I'm actually using an HTML page, okay, with different sections. And for example, this list of categories is actually rendered by a special call to render action. HTML, this object HTML, is a helper class. It creates content according to an output of a certain controller of a certain method. So in this case, I am calling the categories menu action from my default controller, which is store. And if I look at the categories menu, I can see that it actually returns a partial view. This is not a regular view. Partial view is just like user controls in ASP.NET. So has anyone developed user controls in ASP.NET? Yeah? So this is the same idea. It's just a smaller piece of HTML that will be planted inside a bigger HTML. Okay? So this partial view, what's the name of the partial view? What's the name? Hint? Okay, categories menu. It's the last session of the day, so I'll give you a break. Okay, I know it's hard. So categories menu actually takes the list of categories, and it just does a for each loop and generates links. That's it. That's how we get this list of UL and LI elements. Okay. Now let's talk a bit about all of these signs, this @ sign, and what the heck is this sign. So this is the Razor view engine. Okay. So when we talk about MVC, MVC doesn't have to use the simple mixed code that we always seen in ASP.NET web forms. We have different view engines in MVC. We have the regular ASP.NET engine that uses C# and mixed code with the less than and % sign. We have the Razor view engine that uses different formats that allows us to write simpler mixed code. Okay, you'll see some examples in a couple of seconds that will show you that it's more simple to write in Razor. There are different kinds of view engines. You can actually write your own view engine. I don't know why, but in fact, you can do that. Okay, there are actually open source view engine that you can try out, like Enamel and Spark. You can download them. There are even comparisons between when to use each of the view engines. Okay, but the use of Razor is easy. It's more easy than using the ASPX/ASCX files that we used to have in ASP.NET. Okay, because in Razor, writing code is simpler. So first of all, what you see here is the code on the left and the output on the right. And let's see how to use Razor. So first of all, expressions. Okay, if I want to output a string onto my HTML, I can just use the @ sign and the name of the property. Okay, so this is the message. As you can see, it's actually showing that message using HTML encoding because I had the B tag in my string, and the B tag, instead of making my code in bold, it actually is just outputted to the screen, meaning it automatically uses HTML encoding for strings. Okay, I can also do more complex expression. Okay, concatenating strings, all sorts of stuff. I can also print raw HTML. Okay, so if I want that B tag to actually be used in order to make my content bold, I can just use the html.raw method and get the text that is bolded. Okay, I can use the @ sign even without using a function. For example, we use the @ sign in emails. So if you write something at something, ASP.NET MVC and the Razor view engine will automatically know that this is not the @ sign of Razor. Okay, and if you want to actually use that, you can simply escape it by doubling the @ sign. You can use comments quite easily. Okay, just like you use it in ASP.NET web forms. You can even have conditions, if statement, for statement, for each statement. Okay, as you can see, writing in mixed code is much easier with Razor than the regular less than %. If you ever try to write if statement mixed code in ASPX files, you can remember how frustrating it is to always close the opening bracket, right? Okay, so in Razor, you don't have to do that. Look how simple the code looks. If the time is less than 14, then write the time is and write the time. I don't need closing for each opening. Okay, I can use I can use for each loops quite easily. Just write the content of the loop. It's much easier to use mixed code in Razor than it used to be with ASPX and ASCX files. And you can also use reusable content. You can declare your own function and reuse it in several pages. Okay? And instead of writing your function code in the HTML file, you can just wrap it somewhere else, use a reusable name, such as reusable container, and that method actually returns, it doesn't return a string, it returns a Razor object. Okay? So this is a helper function that I wrote. It's called reusable container. It takes a couple of strings, and it creates a Razor content. Okay? So it's much simpler than stuffing a lot of strings together and concatenating them. Okay? So this is the basic of Razor. Razor is going to have a version 2 in .NET 4.5. They are working on it right now. It has been released in beta, in the ASP.NET MVC beta, and offers a lot more features. So let's go back to the demo. So I'm creating a list of categories, and when I click those categories, I actually get the list of subcategories. Okay? Now I want to open Fiddler to show you what's going on in the network. Are you familiar with Fiddler? Fiddler, the web browser, web debugger, sorry. Fiddler, anyone? Fiddler is a sniffer, an HTTP sniffer that allows me to look at the messages that are sent from the browser and the responses that are received from the server. Sorry, it's like? It's like the developer tool in IE, only it's more than a developer tool. It's a web debugger because it allows me not only to see the messages, it allows me to change them in flight. Okay? But from the time they are sent from the client to the server, I can change them. I can change the response. I can replace it. I can do a lot of stuff in Fiddler. It takes me about a day to talk about Fiddler, so stop me when you're ready to move on. Okay. So let's see what happens when I select each and every one of the categories. So as you can see, I'm actually getting an HTML page with a list of categories. And when I click each of these categories, I get a list of products. And each of these products are a bunch of UL and LI elements. Now, to just write these 3 elements, it took me 235 bytes. Now, can anyone think of a better way to write that content in a more concise way? How can I pass 3 objects back to my browser in a more compact way other than wrapping them in a UL and an LI element? JSON, right. I want to be able to return not a page, I want to return a JSON object and write some JavaScript code that will iterate it and generate the UL and LI elements accordingly. So I'll just change a bit of my code. I'll go back to my controller and I'll go back to the browse category. And instead of returning my browse category view, I will return a different view, which we'll take a look at in a second. This is called the browse category with jQuery view. Okay, as you can see, I can set the name of the view that will be returned. It doesn't have to be the default one. Okay, now I compiled it. I'll refresh the application. Okay, and now if I go and select some other category, let me refresh it for a second. Okay, I'll select another category. So first of all, you see a nice effect I added using jQuery animations. And the list that I get here is actually now a JSON object. Okay, this is a JSON JavaScript object notation. If you want to see it more clearly, there is a JSON inspector in Fiddler that shows you the hierarchical view of the object. And this is much simpler than passing an entire UL LI elements structure. Okay, it's much shorter. It's only 100 bytes. It's about 50% of the original size. So how did I do that? What I actually did is I changed a bit of the code, and instead of returning full HTML and links, I'm using jQuery code. Okay, I'm using JavaScript in my HTML, something that we tended not to do previously in ASP.NET. Now we tend to do it every time we can to improve the performance of our application. Okay, so what I actually have here is the list of subcategories. Okay, but that list of subcategories is automatically attached to a jQuery function. And once I click the subcategory, it will flicker and it will show me the list of products. This is done through a special HTML5 set of attributes called data attributes. Data attributes are a simple way of allowing programmers to write their own attributes without littering the HTML code. Okay, HTML always supported adding your own attributes to the HTML, but you always added attributes of your own with your own naming convention and just polluted the code. In HTML5, they offer data attributes. So you can use the data dash whatever you want, data dash category, data dash my name, data dash company name, doesn't matter. And all of these attributes are accessible easily through jQuery. So for example, if I want to access this category in order to do something with it, all I need to do in my code is just call my getProducts function and access the data of the link that was just clicked, and through that data object access the category property. This will access the data dash category product, okay? Category attribute, sorry. And the getProduct actually uses an AJAX call, a simple jQuery AJAX call. It might be simple to me. I guess that if you haven't seen jQuery, has anyone worked with jQuery before? Okay. So for all of you who haven't been working with jQuery, let's talk a bit about jQuery. Okay. So jQuery is fantastic. It's a framework for using JavaScript more properly without, without any way of saying the other, without raping your JavaScript code. Okay. It's just a simple framework to use JavaScript, to use AJAX calls, to use your HTML content, to build new HTML content, to render new elements, to work with elements, to attach to events. It does a lot of things. And jQuery is not something that Microsoft owns. Okay? jQuery is an open source library that you can download to your project. The only reason we're talking about jQuery now is because ASP.NET 4 comes automatically with jQuery. Okay, so once you create an ASP.NET 4 application, it doesn't matter if it's an MVC or web forms, you automatically get jQuery in your application. And you can just connect and get the most recent version and include it in your code. Okay? The main concept of jQuery, write less, do more. Okay? So jQuery is used all over the world. I got these statistics 2 days ago. jQuery is about 42% in all the websites, of all the websites. Okay, not all the websites, top million websites on the web. After that, you can see we have, anyone can see ASP.NET AJAX? No, it's not here. Okay, no one uses ASP.NET AJAX anymore. So usually talking about jQuery takes the minimum of 60 minutes, but we don't have 60 minutes to talk about jQuery. Do we? No, we don't have. So we'll talk 60 seconds on jQuery, and I will start right now. So first of all, in jQuery we have selectors. Selectors are used to find places in the HTML that you want to change, you want to attach events to. So I can select a specific element type. I can select an element by its ID. I can select an element by its class, by its CSS class. And I can use CSS selectors in order to specify exactly which element, the sub, the second child of a table, whatever I want, using CSS3 selectors. Okay? I can attach quite easily to events. I simply need to pick the element I want and to attach a function to one of the events I have in that element. For example, click, key pressed, whatever you want. Okay? I can do manipulation over the DOM object. Okay? The document object model. I can select one of the elements, for example, please select the second TR that is inside the T body in the table. Oh, I'm out of time. And this will select this one. Okay? Not one. Oh, there isn't a table here. And change the background to pink using CSS. Okay? And I can also add animations on my object. So for example, the animation you saw me pick in the subcategory, fade out, fade in, simple as that. Okay? These were 65 seconds about jQuery. We can talk a whole week about jQuery, but I guess you'll have to look it up. And we also have AJAX functions, whether it is to send a GET request, a POST request, or any AJAX request you want. There is a great tutorial set of documents in the jQuery open source website. You can just go there and download a whole bunch of information on it. Okay, so let's go back to the demo and see what else we have here. Okay, so I selected the list of categories. When I select a product, I'm getting the information about that product. This one has no image, but let's select something else that has an image. Okay, this is a, what is it? A bar, handlebar. Okay, so you can see some things that I did here. First of all, there is an image here that I got from MVC. Second of all, there is the cost of those handlebars, which is formatted using the $sign. Okay, and let's see how I actually build this page. So if I go to here, if I go to the product details HTML file, you can see I'm using the HTML helper object with label for and display for. I actually never told in the view the name, the content of the string to display here. Product number, color, cost. I told ASP.NET MVC, please look at this property, the name, the product number, and get the label for it. Okay, for example, how did I break the product number into 2 words? Okay, this is done through through special attributes that allow me to explain how to display that object. So if I go to my order object, not this one, this one. Okay, I'm using metadata typing. Metadata typing allows me to add metadata information on entity framework classes. So if you have an entity framework class in your code, you can simply add attributes to it using a metadata class. The concept is that you use a partial class with the exact name of your entity, and you add the attribute metadata type. This is because we can't change the generated code of the original entity, so we add another class that uses the same properties, only they don't do anything. Okay? But they do have attributes. Attributes such as how to display the property, such as how to format that property. So the standard cost is actually formatted into the cost, and it uses a currency converter. Okay? So I don't have to go over in each of the views and tell the view exactly how to represent my entity. I can just put it in my entity object. Okay? And it also supports globalization if you need to use different languages. Every one of these attributes has a globalization feature that you can just hook it up to a resource instead of writing it as a string. Okay, you can just write the resource name, it will take it from a resource. So I took the product, I'm adding it to the cart. This cart, I will tell you, is actually stored using ASP.NET Profile. So as you can see, I have one item in my cart. I can just close the browser, start the application again, and I'm using an anonymous profile, so it will find me and get back my cart from the profile. The profile is stored in a SQL Server database. Okay, this is ASP.NET Profile. It exists since ASP.NET 2. It's not a part of MVC. So MVC uses stuff from ASP.NET. Okay, and when I go to the cart and I want to go to the checkout, I'm actually required to enter a username and a password. This is ASP.NET membership login controls. Okay, only login controls for MVC. It's not the login controls, the standard ones. Okay, and as you saw before, I have here a page that checks all sorts of stuff. So for example, if I'll try to be Bill Gates for once, let's say Orlando, he was born, I don't know when, state, Washington, postal code, okay? And if I try to pick any different country than the US, the store cannot ship to that country, so I need to pick the US. Now, you might think I wrote a lot of code to create this page. Yeah, I can't use fictitious names. Okay, so I'll change it to my name. MVC knows when Bill Gates is entered into a form. No, I'm kidding. I did that code. And can any of you imagine how much lines I had to write in my view, in my view to write this entire page, these whole fields with the validation? Any ideas? How many says more than 50? Less than, more than 20? More than 10? Anyone thinks it's a one-liner? No? Okay. Well, let's go over and see this page. And this view is actually the shopping cart, not the shopping cart, where is it? I lost it. Not cart summary. Checkout, sorry. Okay. This is all I had to write. What I did here is I started a form so I can submit it. And this is the line. It's actually a one-liner. This is the line that just took the model object and converted it into an editor. Okay, so it's a form based on a model. It just takes every one of the properties and puts a label on it, puts the right control. So for example, you saw that I have here a date control. Okay. How did I do that? Let's see what the model looks like. Okay. This is an object that I created, a class that I created that is using the scaffold mechanism of MVC. Scaffolding actually allows us to define how the page will be created, okay, according to attributes that we set. So for example, I don't want to show the order ID, so I just set it to false. I don't want to show the order date, I just set it to false, neither the username. But first name, last name, address, I want to display them with the following title. I have validations that are required, okay? I have, sorry, I have things like regular expression validations. I have the option of creating a validate method that will be called once that object is being updated. So I can use my own custom code to write some validation code, okay? I can even get an online validation. For example, you remember me writing US, so as you can see, there is an online validation. Every time I type a letter, it actually goes and checks if that country which I wrote is legit or not. Okay, if it's not legit, I will just return an error and it will be displayed in the page. Okay, so it's an online validation also. So all of these stuff are already built into ASP.NET MVC. Validations, Ajax, sorry. All of these stuff are part of the MVC. And if we compare MVC to ASP.NET, well, there's no comparison. No evil view states. More easy to test because I can write simple unit tests over my code. Okay, I have full control over the markup. No longer will I need to inspect what is actually being generated behind a grid view object in ASP.NET Web Forms. Have you ever seen what is being generated from a grid view? It's awful. Okay. On the other hand, ASP.NET still doesn't offer me what you see is what you get editor. It's coming. It will be here someday, but not currently. And if you have a lot of ASP.NET Web Form developers in your group, well, you'll have to teach them a lot before you can switch to MVC. So MVC has a lot of potential, but you need to decide whether you want to use it from now on or maybe only for new things. Okay? And after 10 years of web development, if you try to summarize everything that we talked about, we get a better architecture for our web application. We get a better usage of client-side JavaScript. We get better ways of writing mixed code in our pages, okay, C# plus HTML. We get better way to test our applications. I haven't shown it to you, but unit testing an MVC application is quite easy. Just didn't have time to show that. It's simply a better world to create web applications. And we can only imagine what web applications would look like in 2013 or 2014 with new releases of platforms, of frameworks, whether it's Microsoft or open source frameworks. It's simply going to be a very fast web, a very cool world to develop web applications. So you're going to be considered as cool developers. Okay? So if you want to learn more about MVC, first of all, this session is already online, including the sales application. You can buy bicycles for free, okay, in bit.ly/gids2012. There are a lot of blogs about MVC. I just wrote 3 of the top blogs that I know of from Scott Guthrie and Phil Hack. There is a great tutorial website in ASP.NET. Okay, on the ASP.NET website, and you have my information if you want to learn more about MVC or you have any questions about MVC or general ASP.NET questions. So thank you a lot for your time. I hope I was able to teach you something about ASP.NET MVC, jQuery, Razor, and a lot of other stuff. And if you have any questions, just come to me after the break. We have until tomorrow to discuss about MVC, because tomorrow is gids.java, and I'm gone. Okay, I'm not going to sit for Java. Okay, so thank you for your time.